Alright, so I'm gonna try to make a video on how to install Arch Linux on a UEFI sort of VirtualBox machine for now, because there are a lot of people who are confused by the installation process, and yeah. So anyway, the first thing, to download Arch Linux, again, of course, you should know that you go to the page, archlinux.org, to download, and you pick one of the options. For example, mm, I don't know. Let's try and whatever. So you download the ISO, the previously called Duo ISO, but now it's just x86-64 because Arch Linux is only 64-bit. Uh, so download that. And then what you do is you either burn it on a DVD or use a USB. If you want to use a USB, use a program called Rufus. Now, since my computer doesn't currently contain any USB stick, it's not going to be really showing up. But this is the most important part. In the partition scheme, choose GPT if you want to use UEFI. There is a new version. Interesting. All right. Well, sure. So yeah. Anyway, there we go. So you go with GPT in there. Since I'm not going to be using that, well, that doesn't matter, right? So you create a VirtualBox machine. Uh, just a regular one, or you plug the USB into your computer and reboot. When you do that, make sure to not use CSM and to actually use the UEFI setting, and make sure to turn off secure boot as well, because that's just going to be awful to deal with. So I'm going to be working with EFI on, and with the assumption that you don't use um, any sort of secure boot stuff or anything like that, right? So let's start the box. Anyway, right. So it's gonna ask for the startup disk. So of course I'm gonna pick it, launch it. Now this is the screen you should see. If you see this bootloader, it's systemd boot. It's used only if you boot into UEFI, so that is good if you see that one. Now let me try and change the. Yeah, there we go, like this. Excellent. And let's just try and maybe make it a bit larger so you can see much better, right? Like this. Right. So, from like for 2 months already, I think Arch Linux is only 64-bit. So yeah, pretty much if you use 32-bit PCs, you're out of luck. It's been expected pretty much, but yeah, it's kind of a shame if you think about it, because 32-bit devices really benefited from Arch Linux, as in you could configure it really the way you wanted to, and you would get the speeds that you really need out of those slower devices. Anyway, launch it. It always takes a bit of time on UEFI for some reason. I don't know why it is, but it's still, at least on VirtualBox, it takes like a minute to set up. Right. And then I'm going to be sort of following the installation guide, so you just sort of know uh, what to stick with if you install the operating system. But it's pretty simple actually. Like it really, the most common mistakes and things that are done are with the partitioning. That's probably the most difficult part of the entire install. yeah, I'm gonna be just sticking to the main points so we can make a functioning Arch Linux system that is sort of, you know, you're able to build on top of it. Although the one thing I'm gonna actually mention, even when I get to it, is that the thing, if I'm using VirtualBox, I'm not gonna be able to install like NVIDIA drivers or stuff like that. So yeah, you should be able to make that on your own. I'm gonna show you some examples on how to do that. So first off, you'll get logged into the root console, right? So you are working as a root user. Be careful not to fuck anything up. That is deleting something. Make backups, right? Make backups. Then reboot, then continue with the video, right? So now that you've made backups, we can start. You'll have to verify the boot mode. So it's very simple. If you just ls, which is list, sys slash firmware slash EFI slash if vars. If there are files in there, doesn't matter. If there are any files in there, it means you've booted into UEFI. The first sign was pretty much the UEFI system debootloader. The second sign is this. If you see these two things, it means you are in UEFI and you should not worry about it any longer. Now you're gonna have to see if internet is working. So you ping server. I'm gonna ping 8.8.8.8 because that's Google servers. Hit enter. It's pinging. Control C to break a command, right? Now, important, update the system clock. If you are using Windows, it's gonna fuck the clock up. So Windows is gonna use local time, Linux uses UTC time. UTC time is good, local time is shit. What you have to do is go on the Arch wiki. I'm gonna put it in the video description too. You have to change some registry settings in Windows, so Windows uses actually UTC time, so it doesn't switch around the clocks, because Windows is always going to be like 2 hours or something like that behind Linux, so that's going to be annoying if you dual boot. Anyway, Linux is going to use network time. So the way you enable it is time date ctl space set dash ntp space true. Enter. Network time is on. Just like that. If you want to see the status, time date ctl space status. And now you'll see the time zone, network time on. Yes, that's good. That's important. Now, the most important part is partitioning. We are using UEFI. That means I'm going to be using the GPT partitioning scheme. I won't use the pretty much the MBR because it's outdated and not really good. I don't think so. Yeah, anyway. First thing, lsblk, important command. You should see, if you're installing next to Windows, you should see some partitions. Now, if you want to dual boot and Windows is taking up the entire hard drive, reboot, go into Format, Disk Partitions in Windows, Virtual Disk like Manager program in Windows, shrink the partition there, then reboot, then go here and continue. All right. Now, if you've done that, another thing, if you are using Windows on GPT, there's going to be 100 megabytes system reserved EFI partition. The EFI partition is important. We are going to be using that partition as the boot partition of Linux. It's important to know that. So we are, if you're using Windows and Windows has created an EFI partition, do not create another one, right? Now, check up the device 3 times, check, and see if that's the correct device you're going to be using. cgdisk space /dev /sd or HD if you're using non-SCSI disks. But we are using SCSI disks, so it's SD. SDA for us. Enter. Warning, non-GPT damage disk detected. This will attempt to convert to GPT. May not succeed. This is because the disk didn't have any sort of partitioning tables on it. So, yeah, create. If you are not using GPT, I suggest using CF disk slash def SDA. Now CF disk is sort of this multiple partition table compatible program, so you can select the label type right here. But CG disk is a bit better for me, I think. So I'm gonna use CG disk. Anyway, first off, if you are using SSDs, well, anyway, the first partition, if the disk is completely empty like this, new, and since we have no sort of windows, we are gonna create the EFI partition as the first one. But first off, first sector, 248. If you are using SSDs, optimally you want to start on 4096 because SSDs read chunks in 4 megabyte blocks, not in 2 megabyte blocks. So this is gonna speed it up a bit. I'm not using an SSD for this virtual machine, so it doesn't matter. It's just a slow, mild, like little performance gain, right? So if you want to get out of the maximum that you can from the disk, from SSDs, you can. First sector. Now the size, 100 megabytes should be enough, definitely. Current type is Linux file system. No. Capital L, enter. Capital L again, enter. There we go. Sometimes it's bugged. Anyway, now you should choose the EFI partition scheme, which is on EF00 is the code. It's on the in the left slope, right? EF00. Press enter to continue. EF00. Partition name, I guess just EFI, because that's just sort of something to recognize it. Free space, new. Now, first sector, enter. Size. Now that we've created EFI partitions, we would probably need to create a swap, either swap files, but I don't think actually Btrfs supports that, or a swap partition. So the swap partition, let's go with 2G, right? 2 gigabytes. Again, capital L, look it up. Linux swap is 8022. 8022. That's the swap. Name swap, right? Next off, new partition. Now the root directory. The root directory should be probably around 20 gigs. If you have a big hard drive, maybe 30. The thing is that since I'm using a virtual machine and I'm only on like 20 gigs, I'm just gonna go with like maybe like 10 gigs for the root. That's a lot actually for now. But anyway, size and sectors. Oh crap! Yeah. No, cancel. CG disk. Great. Right, what was this? Size and sectors, 100 megabytes. That was EF00. Partition type, EFI, enter next. Oops. If you fuck something up, you can just delete it. No problem. New first sector, enter. Size and sectors, 10G. Oh no, actually 2G. That's gonna be swap 800820, enter swap, enter new first sector. Now 10G. There we go. That's the size. Linux file system, also L. There's also a Linux root, I believe, somewhere. Chrome, Windows, Linux x86-64 root. 8304. Some programs can use this information to debug the hard drive better, the file system, so use that. The last thing is going to be home, so first sector, everything, and again, home is 8302, so use that. Partition name home, or root home. If you are sort of comfortable with the decisions you've made, just write it to the disk. So write, type yes, enter. Be careful. There we go. That may have destroyed the data. Right, exit. Pretty much that's it. That's the partitioning. Once you've done that, you're pretty much past all the trouble, I guess. So now you have to format the partitions. and then mount them. So lsblk. Now you see the drive is divided into 4 partitions, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. mkfs, right? That's the command to make file systems. Now, what if you... Yeah, well, first off, you want to choose what file system you're going to use. There are plenty of them to choose from. First off, the EFI partition always has to use FAT32. It doesn't matter. EFI system partition has to be formatted in a way that you use mkfs.fat space capital F32 /dev/sda or B or C, depending on your drive, and then the number of the partition. If you already have the partition created by Windows, don't do anything. Sorry about the noises. It's annoying, I know. Now, in this case, it's SDA1. Go that, use that. Done. mkswap for the swap. So now, mkswap dev SDA2. Done. Swap on /dev/sda2 to turn it on. Done. Now mkfs.ext4 or Btrfs, depending on the one you want to use. Btrfs has copy on write, snapshot support, stuff like that, so it's pretty great. So I'm going to use that. But if you want to use the more time-tested file system, just go with ext4. So Btrfs /dev/sda3 and /sda4. It's going to auto-detect SSDs and automatically adjust accordingly. Now, that's done. Now, mount them. lsblk, mount dev SDA first, the root partition, so SDA3 in this case, into /mnt. Then make directory in mnt and a boot directory, so /boot and /home. And now mount the SDA1 or the EFI partition from Windows into, this is critical, right, into mnt boot, do this, and mount the home partition, so SDA4 into mnt home. Easy, done. Now you're going to install the system. Packstrap is the install script, /mnt, base, and also space and put base-devel, because if you're going to try and install programs from AUR or compile something, and you are going to try to do that, believe me or not, sooner or later, you're going to be stuck because you won't know and you won't remember that you forgot to install the development packages. So do that. Enter. Synchronizes the package sources, goes online, finds all the software, downloads it, extracts it automatically. I think that's pretty straightforward and pretty easy. So, yeah, we'll see when it's finished. Right, so now it's done. Now we have to generate the FS tab. So gen FS tab dash capital U space MNT into add /MNT etc FS tab. So pretty much this generates the FS tab. You can categonate it, so MNT etc FS tab. If there's anything in there, there is, should be all right. Now arch chroot into MNT. Now you're in the new system, sort of. Now, time zone. Time zones should be set automatically. I mean, you should be able to create a link. So ln-sf from user share zone info Europe and your city into etc local time. Yeah, and now HW clock, so that's hardware clock -- systo HC enter. That's gonna set the hardware clock correctly. Now, locales, that's important. So, nano etc locale.gen. Here, you pick your locales you want. So, we're probably gonna pick just the English, right? So, what's the point in picking others right now? But make sure to pick the UTF one, right? Uncomment, right? Uncomment it. Save. Control X. Now, locale-gen. It's going to generate all the locales you've picked. And now, nano etc locale.conf. And here, into the new file, you put lang equals, and now the name of the locale. So en-us capital dot utf dash 8 capitals. Save, exit, done. Hostname. Nano etc hostname. Pick a hostname. So arch testbox, Control O, enter, done. Now nano at etc-hosts. Put it in here also. So put another one here. Entry 127.00.0.1.1. There we go. Tab. My hostname dot local domain, so that should be arch linux or arch testbox, whatever that was, dot local domain, and then tab and go arch testbox again, enter, save. Network configuration, sudo pacman, sudo no, actually we already root, pacman-s. Now we are going to be using network manager. So network manager, enter, install it. This is going to install into the system. Remember, we are chrooted, so we are actually sort of using the system. We can't enable services yet. That's the thing you can't really do when you're chrooted. So when we reboot, but first off, we should have all these packages available. There we go, done. Now, I think that should be all. Oh, also bootloaders. Yeah, right. Well, first off, let's set the password. So passwd, this is for the root user, so something normal, I guess. Updated, done. Now, bootloader, I'm going to be using systemd boot. Why? Because it's fast, easy, and good, right? No hassle. So, first off, the first requirement to install systemd boot as the bootloader is to have an EFI partition mounted in boot. So if we go ls in boot, it should be sort of empty. There should be like Linux kernel, yeah, VM Linux, and that's pretty much it. That's the EFI partition. There is enough space for Linux and Windows, both. Don't worry, 100 megabytes is enough. But if you want it bigger, you can make it bigger. But don't forget, if Windows already made a partition, you have to use that one. So if it's 100 megabytes, it's 100 megabytes. Remember to remove excess old stuff from there if the need arises. Right, so to install it, just go boot ctl --path. Now, I think the path is actually omittable. But anyway, let me see, just to be sure. I guess that's just doesn't really need to be there. So bootctl install, and yeah, it knows it's at boot. So that would be if you had the EFI partition somewhere else, but then additional complications arise. So you've done this. Pretty cool, right? Now, basic configuration. This is the hardest part of the installation, probably, aside from partitioning. First off, right, we have to go nano boot loader entries. Now create an entry, for instance, arch.conf. It's empty. On Arch Linux Wiki, there is a great sort of example. However, I can't really use that because I'm in a virtual machine. So anyway, first entry is title. That's the name. So tab, for instance, Arch Linux, I don't know, 1.0, whatever. The next one is Linux kernel location. before that, there's going to be actually one thing, but anyway, Linux kernel location, that's dash vmlinux dash linux. Next is init rd, that's dash init ramfs dash linux.img. Actually, there's one more, so put another line above it, init rd, there will be intel-ucode.img package, if I believe correctly, if you're using Intel CPUs, alright, if. I'm not, but if you'll do this, right, since I'm not going to be leaving it there, but if you're using Intel, do this, alright, I'm going to delete it now. And options, this is going to be fun, root equals part UUID equals a long ass number and then RW at the end. The long ass number we are gonna create now. So save it, exit. If you put the Intel ucode package, go sudo pacman s Intel ucode and install it. Alright? And it's gonna be alright. We are not, because we are not using Intel, sort of right? It's VirtualBox. Anyway, now the way to create the long ass number I've been talking about is do lsblk, then blkid dash s dash part uid space dash o value dev sd and now a3. It's the root. It's supposed to be the root partition, right? So SDA3 is the root partition, and append, so that means two right arrows, into boot, what's there, loader, entries, archconf. Now, go back, now the long ass number is here. So you just type one backspace, it's after the equal signs, then go at the end, space RW. Save, done. Now we need to create one last file, which is in which is the main configuration file for this, and it's supposed to be in boot loader conf. So edit that with nano. Just delete this default and type default arch.conf, for instance, right? Timeout. Be sure to turn timeout on. Otherwise, if you want to get to the menu, you have to hold the space bar, because it's just gonna skip the thing altogether. Now, save that. Now, pretty much you're done, right? Reboot. Control D to exit your root and reboot. That's all, pretty much. Now it's gonna reboot, and you see you have the bootloader. So there's gonna be a few default options in there. If you have Windows, it's gonna automatically detect it and put it there, but it has to be on the same EFI partition. Now, pretty much you've done that. So click the first one, and it's gonna boot. Pretty simple, right? So a few tips after the installation is, from me at least, is to create a user. Definitely, that's the first thing. Now we're gonna have to log in as root. For one last time, I guess, and it's on the wiki as well, but the way you create a user is pretty simple. So just by user add -m, so he gets a home partition, dash capital G, so he gets added to the group wheel, which is the administrator group, -s, and that's the shell, which is going to be /bin/bash, which is a good shell, right? If you want some other shells, you can customize it right there. And the last thing is the name of the user. So for me, it's going to be David. Enter. Done. Now, pass WD, David, or other user account you've created. Now, type his password. Type his password again. It's updated. Now, one last thing to do is to edit the the sudo file with vi sudo. If you don't want to use vi, you have to go editor =nano, or actually, was it in? Yeah, in capitals, I think. Editor capitals =nano, and then vi sudo. Now that's going to use the nano editor. Now we can just navigate normally. There we go. So we've got two things, I think. Uncommon to allow members of group wheel to execute any command. So probably this should be good, right? If you want only a specific user, here is root, right? So go David, all, or the username you've created, all. It's just, you know, replicate the line, and you're gonna be put in the sudoers file. But this should work if the user is in the group. It should work. Now, log out, log in, sudo pacman-syu. That's how you're gonna update the system. No sy, just syu. Enter. It's gonna tell you about the 3 things you should respect when using sudo. And the internet is working. Excellent. But sudo is, because otherwise it wouldn't allow us to execute the command. So internet, that's pretty simple. Systemctl enable network manager with capital N and M dot service thing sudo was it's gonna re-authenticate, but sudo. Anyway, pretty clever. And now start. Right? Good. Now ping. Now it's working, right? Sudo pacman-syu. And it's working. There we go. If you want to configure the network, use sudo nmtui. Enter. This is a great interface by System Network Manager. So edit a connection. You can edit, add connections, create, ignore IPv6 connections, make them available, choose the device, etc. So it's great. You can even set the system host name here. Now, a few programs that are really advantageous. First off, if you want to use graphical interface, you have to install the appropriate driver. So usually you're going to be using the X server, although Wayland is getting more popular as the time goes. So you have to sort of choose the correct driver. We can actually sort of use the default driver, the Visa one. So Pacman SXF86-video-Visa, I believe it is the default driver for graphics. There we go. And now Pacman, we're going to install the X server and perhaps XFCE. So first it's, I think, xorg-x server, xterm, that's a great program, and xorg-x server-utils. xorg-server, I believe, not xserver. Yeah. Now it's gonna ask us to create libg to download the correct libgl dependency. If you are using NVIDIA, depending on which driver, right, choose that one. Otherwise, go with the first one. Enter. A few megabytes. Gonna take just a while. Short while to download. It's just 40 megabytes or so. Yeah, I should really fix the network to the bridged adapter. This is just killing me. There we go. Switch the network. It's gonna be a bit... there we go. Should be much better right now. Much better. There we go. Nice and quick. So it's going to install fonts config and other dependencies. Right. Now, let's install xinit also. Xorg xinit, I think. Xorg xinit. Yep. Now let's install a LXDE. So let's go with everything, or XFCE actually. Let's go with that. XFCE. What was the XFCE4? Yeah, and also XFCE4-goodies. That's some good things. So enter everything. Just get it all down. Download it in here. So that's for the graphical user basic interface. If you can't really get X to work and you need additional help, but you have the console, it's pretty great because there are great tools. Christ, I'm sorry. With the teletype consoles and console programs. So when this gets installed, which is going to be a moment, you have two, I guess, very essential programs that you want to be using very much. So the first one is called Lynx. That's text web browser. So sudo pacman as Lynx. And when you just turn it on, you hit G, then you can go sort of onto URL. So we can go into Google, for instance, and it's a fully fledged sort of browser, I guess. Some sites support this text-based web browsing. Some sites don't. Google does. Arch Linux does. Arch Linux Wiki and stuff like that does. So you can use this to browse the web. Now, Q to exit, sort of. Yep. And the other one is, of course, MC, which is Midnight Commander, which is a great program. It has a lot of extensions, as you can see, so definitely install those if you want to. Even in your normal system, we should do this right now. So pacman as unrar zip unrarg, so unrg, right? Samba is for virtual file systems, so if you want to sort of connect Windows and stuff like that together. P7zip, that's for 7-zip. And CDRKit, that's for reading DVDs and CDs. And ASpell for spelling corrections. So these are pretty much the basic codecs, sort of, you need. LaunchMC, it's a great file manager, so this should help you a lot. Now, let's test the graphic user interface. So, usually you can use either like a display manager, so you have a login, or you can use, I guess, direct start of the XFCE. I'm just gonna start it directly. So really, it's supposed to get in the xinit directory. So sudo nano etc x capital X11 x init rc. Now these things down here, delete all of these. Exec space start xfce4 save exit start x. And there we go. It's gonna start. Shoot. Probably not, because I'm probably missing a driver. Video Visa, so it's probably, is it Misa? Do I need it? Probably. Start X, no. Let me see. Probably not gonna have a, yeah. Well, anyway, if you have the correct driver, it should load up. So no worries about that. And then you can just turn it on. Yep. So that's it. Enjoy.